Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend Brad. What's going on tonight?
Man, it's good. It's a beautiful day outside, sunshine. Life is good. Kids are crazy. Things are good, man. How about you?
Yeah, same here, man. Just had a good workout, so I'm brought in that, post-workout high.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
Chest, legs, back?
Actually, today was cardio, believe it or not. So,
okay.
Our common friend has me running a controlled heart rate workout. So it's an interesting dynamic for me.
Do you want a bike? Treadmill?
I actually ran.
Ugh,
So,
gross.
A lot of walking because it was low heart rate, but it was good.
Cool.
Speaking of being outside, tonight we wanted to talk about 3 reasons why men should spend time outside. The impetus of this, when we were talking about it earlier, was really, we were talking about the outdoors, I believe, when we say outside. But outside in general will be relevant to all the topics we read. We had 3 main benefits that we came up with for why men should spend time outside. Those were physical benefits, mental benefits, and the improved ability for problem solving. So we can jump into all 3. Let's start with physical benefits.
I mean, to start off with physical benefits, the obvious is you get exercise, you get movement. You think of today's society, how many men are sitting in front of their Xbox or watching a movie, catching up on Netflix, working long hours. When you're doing that, you're sitting. Crazy story, but human beings are not meant to sit for long periods of time. It's actually pretty damn detrimental to a man's health if he sits all day and veggies on the couch. And getting up and moving is paramount to man being able to be physically capable. So just the act of going outside and moving, hiking, climbing over rocks, climbing a tree if you're feeling real wild, those sorts of things, it's good. It gets your blood flowing. It gets you, obviously gets your heart rate up, does a lot of things that are very beneficial for you physically. But it goes well beyond that. There's so much more in terms of physical benefit than just exercise.
Being outside from a physical sense, it just, there's so many benefits. So the first one that comes to mind, right, is you're outside, you're usually in the sunshine, your vitamin D exposure is increased immediately. So
Why is vitamin D important?
It plays a huge role in your immune system. In general, it's just a very good benefit. We're all vitamin D deficient. And that was proven in the recent pandemic that vitamin D was actually a supplement that a lot of physicians were recommending people take to get over or help prevent symptoms from during the pandemic. It does a lot of other things. It also impacts weight, appetite, metabolism, and like I said, it's extremely common in the world right now. So it's something that can be improved upon by just being outside, being in the sun. There's other things. This kind of goes into step 2 with the mental part, but it relieves stress and lowers your cortisol levels, which is your body's stress hormones. That translates into better moods and overall health. That kind of stuff has been linked to weight gain and increased risk of diabetes. So the more you control your stress levels, the healthier you are. And then there's reduced inflammation, improved immune functions, all kinds of good stuff in terms of just being outside and being active. And honestly, the biggest part, though, to the physical health part is what you hit on before. 9 times out of 10, when you're outside, you're some kind of active. You're going for a walk, you're going for a bike ride, you're hiking, you're water skiing, you're doing something that is not sedentary, and you're better for that.
Yeah. Now, along those lines, I do enjoy sitting in a hammock or laying in a hammock a whole lot. But oftentimes the way in which I enjoy that is at the end of a long hike.
Right.
I'll hike somewhere, find a nice couple of trees, set up my hammock, and just chill. But it's that active physical exertion. When you're outside, you are so much less likely to be sedentary. You're not just going to sit on a step or sit on a rock. You're generally going to want to do something. And it's simply that motion. And it's very interesting to think that plays a tremendous role in terms of heart health. When you sit around, when you're sedentary, the organ in your body that's most affected by all of that is your heart. We have a pandemic within the country, like a true one, that revolves around high blood pressure, coronary heart disease, different things like that. So much of that is attributed, yes, to diet, but also to our sedentary lifestyle. We sit on the couch. We don't do anything when we're not going outside. Yeah, when we think of vitamin D, first place you always go to is milk, right? Vitamin D milk, whole milk. But truth be told, as you said, most of us are vitamin D deficient. What's the greatest source of vitamin D? It's the sun. If you can simply spend 30 minutes a day outside, you're going to be healthier because of it. So that's not asking much. I think that one of the greatest benefits for me personally when I did 75 hard was the actual spending time outside. Committing to do that every single day had an incredible effect on me. One of the things that both you and I have is a Whoop strap that tracks a lot of data. One of the biomarkers that I track against is time spent outside. I've noticed that my recovery, like in terms of recovery score that Whoop provides, is significantly better when I spend a tangible amount of time outside every day. So it's wildly beneficial.
So 2 points to what you said. First is I'd make the argument that with regards to the hammock, if you're going to lay down and read a book, you're still better off setting up that hammock outside in the backyard and reading the book outside than you are on the couch inside.
True.
Just being outside is more beneficial to you. And then the second is I can't tell you the science behind it, but I can tell you 100% that the days I spend outside the majority of the day, I sleep so much better at night. Don't know what it is. It's especially true in like the spring and the fall, but in general, the more time I spend outside, the better I sleep at night.
There's something to it. I mean, we as creatures have spent the majority of our lives outside. I mean, this inside couch dweller society is a very recent development within the last, really since the Industrial Revolution is when that started.
Yeah.
So we need to be outdoors.
Absolutely. So the second point that we had was that it increases mental health or has mental benefits. So you want to dig into a couple of facts there that you pulled up?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think of mental status or your mental state, the first place that I go to is that simply by spending time outdoors, it releases a lot of endorphins. That generally is going to help increase your mood, help you feel a lot better about yourself. And that comes from the act of exercise as well. By simply getting outside and moving around and doing that, you're going to be able to relieve stress. One of the best stress relievers that I've ever encountered is simply going on a walk around my neighborhood or going on a bike ride when something gets hard. I actually prefer that to anything, going to the gym, whatever it looks like. I prefer spending time in the outdoors when I need to get my head right because it has a very cleansing, calming effect. A lot of men will often say that they feel at peace or at home when they're in the outdoors. You know, if you think, I don't know if anybody has listened to or read John Eldridge's book, Wild at Heart, men are essentially called outdoors. They're called to do wild things, to do brave things. And so much of that comes from this longing, this calling almost to go outside, to spend time in the woods, to go on high adventure, because it really is something that's grounding. It helps bring us back to our roots. And there's something out there that it just feels like home.
There's two things there as well that really I want to dive into a little bit more. The first is when you're outside, 9 times out of 10, and especially when you're in the outdoors, you're detached from the digital world. You're not looking at Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or email or anything like that. You're removed from that, which immediately is going to brighten your mood because those are all just cesspools. We use them. We definitely use them. They're tools. But in general, they can be, just cesspools where you waste time and you get frustrated. And the more you remove yourself from those, the more you feel better and you get in a better mental state. And the second is you were hitting on it. And again, it's especially true in the outdoors as opposed to just being outside. But going for a hike, going camping, backpacking, whatever it is, just being in the outdoors puts you in a mental place of simplicity and peace that I cannot get anywhere else in the world. I think about times when I've gone on backpacking trips and the simple act of just following a trail through the woods and looking for a place to sleep that night. Very simple. It's work, especially if you're in the mountains and you're going up and down and around and navigating. But you're not dealing with all the BS in the world. It's just you've got your simple honed in priorities, and that's life right now, and that's all you have to worry about. And it actually frees your mind up to subconsciously kind of figure everything else out. I don't know about you, but there's been a lot of times where I've gone for a hike, I've gone on a backpacking trip, and I've had something really big plaguing me in life. And all of a sudden, I come out of that trip, either it's not that big of a deal anymore, or I figured out a solution by not even thinking about it, and just letting my world of concern be so centered on the immediate, just more or less survival needs of that trip.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I think of a backpacking trip I went on with a buddy, and we followed a trail. There's a part of the trail that was not very well marked, and we went off the trail, and we probably went a mile off the trail and got ourselves kind of lost. It was up in the mountains, up in the Uinta Mountains here in Utah, so it wasn't thick, dense forest, but it was still 10,000 feet above sea level. We weren't entirely sure where we were, and part of me was scared, but part of me felt so unbelievably alive and excited that we had this challenge to overcome. Figure out, all right, we got to figure out where we are. We got to figure out how to get back to where we were. And thinking through the various scenarios of what if we are lost? What if we have to survive out here for a few days? And people have told me I'm crazy, but it was exciting. It felt good. It's like, we've got a challenge to solve. And if we're stuck, we're going to have to figure it out. It was invigorating. And I remember we eventually found our way back to the trail, made our way to an awesome campsite, had a great time. Got up the next morning, went cliff diving. And I look back on that and feeling, and just the power and the peace and the resolve that came from simply getting lost and then really being able to find a way back. It was awesome. It's something that within reason, I kind of hope to do again, not go overboard and get eaten by a grizzly or something, but it was a pretty cool experience.
I've got a similar story. A group of friends and I went into the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and we hiked to the top of one of the mountains and camped there for the night. And the idea was that we would wake up before sunrise and be able to see sunrise over Waterville Valley, which, if you know New Hampshire, it's an area where there's some ski resorts, and it's just a kind of a touristy area in New Hampshire, but it's this big valley that the White Mountains kind of encircle. And we're sleeping on top of a mountain. It's kind of a crazy place to camp, but there's really nothing to concentrate on other than camping, sleeping, making sure we wake up. And then that morning, I'm sitting on this big rock face ledge, looking at the sun come up over this huge valley. And I'm realizing that I'm watching something that maybe 3 other people in the world right now are seeing. The 3 other people that are with me. Nobody else has the view that I have right now because of where we are and how the mountain's facing and all this stuff. And it was just amazing, but it was such a peaceful mental moment. I had a lot going on at home. My girls were little, work was tough. There was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And literally just being able to be in that moment in the outdoors and just have the worries of the world just disappear as I watched this beautiful sunrise was this mental break, this mental health break that was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think of the countless sunrises that I've seen, whether that's in the mountains or, on the ocean. It's peaceful, it's calming, it's reassuring. And being able to experience that, it does something for a man's soul and his heart and his mind. It's powerful. And kind of as a juxtaposition to that, I think a lot about the mental health crisis and crises that we all went through and going through COVID and the enforced lockdowns. And I have some friends from work who are over in the UK. For those of you who aren't familiar with how the UK handled COVID, very strict lockdowns, in so much that police would watch. And if you were outside for anything other than getting groceries, you were required to go home. I had some friends who were single, lived by themselves in apartments, and they were shuttered up in their houses for 6 months with hardly being able to leave, and the detrimental effects that it had on them. It was unbelievable. I remember having conversations with guys who were gregarious and awesome and just good dudes. And after those 6 months, they were incredibly mentally afflicted. One of them had gone through a mental breakdown. Another one was not the same guy that I knew, simply because they were required to stay home. They were isolated. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to be said from isolating yourselves from other people, but just the fact that they were forced to stay at home, could not leave under almost any circumstance aside from absolute bare necessities, it was haunting. And it was very much evidence of why it's so important that we spend time outside, that we get outside of our houses.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I knew people over in the UK and down in Australia who
Australia's bad.
both were making comments on social media about how excited they were when those governments finally allowed them to have an hour of physical activity time outside. However many times a week it was.
I remember that.
They were so excited. I also remember that there was guys who were getting caught because they were posting rides on Strava. I don't know if you read about that, but there was a couple people in, I think it was the UK and Australia, who were actually being caught by the government because they were posting, 2-hour-long bike rides during these lockdowns. But it shows, that's going down a little rabbit hole here, but it shows the pull that the outdoors has to us. We are not, like you said at the top of the episode, we are not made to be indoor beings. We are made to be working outside.
Yeah. And I would argue that the guy that that is a gamer, all right, let me throw it out there. I enjoy gaming from time to time. Don't come shoot me for this. But guys who are hardcore gamers who do nothing but game, they struggle. They struggle badly because they're inside all the time. I have a colleague at work who games constantly. I think that's the only thing that he does. And as a result, he almost never, ever goes outside. And I can see it in his demeanor. Obviously, he has some health challenges as a result of his life decisions, but his mental state is one of cynicism, nihilism. He's just not a happy guy. And there's probably more to it than simply just not going outside. But I guarantee you that if he took some steps to do that, that would greatly improve his mental state.
Oh, absolutely. I've got guys that I work with who are gamers, and they, we'll be talking about stuff, and they'll cringe at the idea of the fact that this weekend they have to go to a pool party for somebody, or be outside for an extended period of time. And I personally don't understand it. I listen. I get that I'm a mountain biker and I'm a backpacker and surfer, and I do all these things outside, and that's not everybody's cup of tea. But just the physical act of being outdoors making you cringe, that doesn't compute with me. That is, I think about it this way, right? How much healthier do you feel in the summer when you're spending on average more time outside than in the winter when you're locked up because it's cold and miserable outside? And just how much healthier you feel when your skin has a little bit of color to it, and you've been out in the sun, you've smelt fresh air. It's not that stale air that's just sitting in your house. It's just there's so many intangible benefits to being outside as opposed to inside.
Like, you think about it, I mean, even if we go as far anecdotally as looking at Pacific Islanders or people from the Caribbean, they're always so chill. Yes, this is extremely anecdotal. I understand that, but I have spent a considerable amount of time in my life in the Caribbean, and that persona, that personality, that comes out simply because they're in a place where they want to spend time outside. They want to go to the beach. They want to catch some waves or catch some sun. You always think of every time you go to the Caribbean, there's this carefree mentality that exists there, but it pervades their entire culture because it's what they do. They're just a happier people because of it. It's interesting.
Well, there's a reason why people flock to places like that for vacation too. People don't flock to Maine in the middle of winter for vacation unless you're a skier or a snowboarder or unless you have a specific reason, and those are all outdoor pursuits. But people flock to St. Martin, Hawaii, Caribbean, Pacific Islands, all over the place, all times a year because the weather's nice and they want to be outside.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. They want the sun. They want the warmth. They want that feeling of just being connected with the earth. And there's a definite mental health benefit to that. Have you ever gone on a Caribbean vacation and yeah, you're probably tired at the end, but have you ever felt mentally worse than when you showed up?
Nope.
I haven't.
Never. Never, never, never. Pretty much any vacation I've ever been on, I've never felt that way unless it was spending time in downtown LA.
I, I've been to vacations in cities where I'm like, I feel just as bad,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but never when I'm outside for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings us to point number 3, which I find probably to be the most interesting one. And it's probably the one where we're going to have the most anecdotal backups. But being outside increases your problem solving capability. This is an interesting one to me. When we were talking about it, we were definitely talking about it in an outdoors mentality. So when I brought up this idea, I was definitely thinking about being in the outdoors and being in one of those situations where you're challenged both physically and mentally to survive is a strong word, but to get through it. I can think of numerous occasions where it's happened to me. It's mostly on backpacking trips or long mountain bike rides where a lot of times this will come in where you've got an equipment failure. So I'll give you, for instance, I was backpacking in New Hampshire, one of my favorite places to backpack, and I get about 10 miles in and I have an equipment failure. Something happened with my tent pole and I could not get it to work right. And I had to figure out how to make it through the night with a broken tent pole. Now it doesn't sound like a big deal, and it really, it's not. But you have to learn how to MacGyver things in those situations, and it's a problem solving mindset, right? So I was able to rig up the system between some extra cordage and some sticks, and made it through the night, and all was good. But there's also other situations. I've been on backpacking trips where we've had guys who get seriously ill or injured, and we have to problem solve in order to get them out and deal with how does the group handle this? How do we shuffle people around? How do we carry gear? We had one time where a guy had, I think I've told the story a little bit, but we had a guy who had a severe kidney issue in a backpacking trip out in Tennessee, and we had to get him out, and we had to travel at least 4 or 5 miles before we could even get to a road and hope that somebody drove by on this dirt fire road in the middle of a state forest. And fortunately, we were able to find somebody, but we also had to figure out how to carry his pack, help him through the trail, which was a rugged trail, and just a lot of problem solving that occurs there. That translates to life because life is all about problem solving. And the act of being outdoors and putting yourself into those situations allows you to problem solve and concentrate on that. When you have that, when I referred to it before, that limited mental requirement of I just need to survive right now. I just need to get through the trip. I need to feed myself. I need to shelter myself, and I need to take care of myself and all these other people that are with me. And it's a very powerful thing to me, because my takeaway from all that after we got everyone to safety and after you deal with equipment failures and stuff like that was I'm able to take a look at that from a bigger picture and determine, hey, I have this capability to think outside the box, to prioritize and then execute on certain things, determine what's really important, what's not. Those are all skills that you can take and transfer into life in different areas. And being in the outdoors typically presents more of those situations.
Why do you think that mentality is so much more prevalent? That survival mentality, that problem-solving mentality, when you're out in the outdoors?
My initial reaction would be that it's because you don't have an immediate bailout. You don't have that ability to just, if it's really bad, call 911. You don't have that immediate ability to, have somebody in the house or a friend come over and give you a hand with something. You are there by yourself with your limited tools and equipment and knowledge, and you got to figure it out. And you have to be creative at that point.
Yeah, I think in a lot of these circumstances, you don't have access to Google or 911 or the tin of Band-Aids sitting in your closet or whatever that might be. And that brings us back. I think we as men instinctually know how to solve problems. Men as hunter-gatherers, as providers for their families throughout history have been asked to do really hard things. It comes back to anybody who's a dad. Everybody who's about to be a father has no idea what the hell they're doing. This baby comes out. You're terrified. You're scared half to death. And then you just instinctively do it. There's this instinct within you that guides you and helps you in these situations. And I think that in so many ways, our forefathers paved the way for us instinctually to know what to do when situations arise. We have that within ourselves. When you were telling that story, it made me think of a whole lot of things. Going back to that story I talked about earlier, getting lost and finding our way back. I think about the last time I was in the Caribbean. I really enjoy going on pretty difficult snorkeling trips. So we were at this beach, and it's the Caribbean. The water's almost constantly beautiful, clear as glass. But if you get out far enough, there can be some turbid water. There can be some waves. There can be some current. And we're at this beach on St. John called Cinnamon Bay. Beautiful. There's this little key right in the middle of Cinnamon Bay. And I was like, I'm going to go swim out there. I'm going to snorkel around it. It's going to be awesome. I knew that when I got out there, the water was going to be a little rough. I went by myself. I'm a strong swimmer, so I wasn't concerned or worried about myself. But I get out there, the waves were really strong. And the current and everything was like pushing me toward rocks that were filled with urchins and all this crap I didn't want to mess with. And in that moment, I was able to assess the situation and realize, okay, in order to get through this water, I'm not going to stop and go back, even though part of me wanted to. I was just going to keep going forward because I had to do it. But I knew that if I were going to accomplish that I would need to swim in such a way that I was cutting at an angle to be able to avoid all these things and avoid the danger. And as I was able to analyze through that, make those adjustments, got through no problem. It was a simple problem to solve, but it was something that I was able to immediately do on the fly that I think all men, when they're really held to task, are able to do.
That speaks to a bigger picture as well, that men inherently want challenge. Life without challenge is boring to us.
Sucks.
We want problems to solve. We want obstacles to overcome. And we take pride in the fact that we are capable of doing that. Being in the outdoors, whether it's the wilderness, whether it's being in the ocean like you talk about, because I've had similar situations. I also think about situations where I'm out like surfing and I get caught in a riptide. Scary situation. You know what to do. You have to get through that challenge. Yeah. But, the ocean, the woods, even, winter situations, whether you're snowboarding, snowmobiling, whatever, there's challenges that get presented there. Just being outside, we want challenges. We want obstacles. We want to show that we are capable. We want to prove to ourselves that we're capable, not even show other people that we're capable. Internally, innately, we were born with a desire and a need to show that we are capable beings. And we take pride in that, and it grows you as a man. The other thing that we made note of before was it also introduces a measure of risk. Men need risk. We need an element of danger. And it goes hand in hand with that challenge and that obstacle bit. I think you had mentioned before something about Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. He talks about this in that book. Our need for risk and adventure and for understanding where that line is for each one of us in terms of our ability, and to maybe expand that ability just a little bit every time. It's important to growth as a man.
That was something I was actually looking up while you were talking. It came back to John Eldredge in that book. There's a quote that he said that really resonates where most men come from. Problem solving, spending time outdoors, there's an element of risk that's introduced. And this risk is, in some sense, when you're really out there, something that if it goes sideways could end horribly. You could die, right? But at the same time, when men are presented with some of those risks and some of that adventure, it's enthralling, it's exciting, it's terrifying as hell, but there's something to it that's just alluring. That's within a man's heart. And what he says that sticks with me in that book is, deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. Every man wants adventure. They seek it. They crave it. And he even goes as far as to say the most dangerous man on earth is the man who's reckoned with his own death. All men die. Few men ever really live. When it comes to adventure and spending time out there, we crave it. And that's why the outdoors presents that for us. You think of Davy Crockett, and you think of Daniel Boone, and you think of all those crazy adventures, and Stephen Ranella, and Bear Grylls, and all these guys who just have done incredibly amazing things. men admire them. But these men that have created these incredible adventures have done all of these things in the outdoors. They've gotten outside and done something.
Think about the time that you felt most alive, though. It's those times when you've cheated death, whether you've gone off that big jump on the snowboard, or you've hiked into that area where you shouldn't be hiking, or not shouldn't be hiking, but you don't think you can make it, and you've made it up that cliff, or whatever it is. That even something as simplistic, we'll say, as avoiding a car accident. When you swerve and you just barely miss that car, that energy, that thrive, it's that challenge, it's that staring death in the eye kind of moment that really gets men going. And it speaks to that quote.
Yeah. I went cliff jumping once, and this reservoir that we went to, the cliff was about 50 feet. It was pretty high, but it was one where you had to run out to jump so you could clear some rocks sitting right below. Like if you just walked up to the edge and jumped off, you land on the rocks and suffer a horrible, painful, miserable death. And I remember I jumped out, and I didn't get a great jump. And I remember looking down thinking, I'm going to hit these rocks. I'm going to die while I'm sitting. I'm falling. Like if anybody's just gone cliff jumping and gotten themselves in this situation, it feels like you're falling forever. And it felt like I'd been falling for several seconds. Obviously, it wasn't. It was maybe like a second, thinking, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I cleared the rocks. I didn't clear them as well as maybe I should have, but I cleared them, and because obviously I'm here. But I remember getting up out of the water and thinking, oh shit, I could have died. That was awesome. It's empowering.
I could have died. That was awesome. That is exactly the mindset that I was going after.
Yeah.
Because you pushed the envelope. You found where that edge is, and you maybe push it just a touch more. And that's where we come alive. And the outdoors does that for us. I mean, I don't think there's much else to add to that, Brad. Just to recap, the three benefits of spending time outside or outdoors. There's physical benefits, there's mental benefits, and then there's the ability to improve your problem solving capabilities. And it's really that simple. It's really that important, though, for men. So I challenge all of you to get outside this week, challenge yourself, create obstacles, create instances where you can push yourself and kind of find that edge. And when you're not doing that, what we ask you to do is visit us on our social media, post up what you're doing, your challenges, show us what you're doing outdoors. We want to see that. And then make sure that you give us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast player. That helps us spread the word and helps us get ranked higher so that other men see this and are helped by the message that we're sending. That's all we've got this week. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you come back next week. And until then, we'll leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?